I feel like I've barely done anything. And now there's this book. Mike already did the cover. He did interior work. I feel like there's like a 99% chance he'll flip through it and he's going to see my stuff.
Hey, thanks for listening. People love to ask, what do you do? While I prefer to discuss the things I'm interested in, they want a job title. So I say art director and designer because that's what I do for a living. But a portion of me feels like a fraud. Not because I'm swindling employers or clients, but because no accredited body gave me a piece of paper declaring me as such. You'd think after working on household brands for 25 years, this feeling would fade, but it hasn't. It only disappears when I'm designing. While working, there's no self, just the moment. Of course, when the work's over, the unquiet creeps back in. At this moment, I'm on the home stretch for my third novel. Like in 1953, before Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile barrier, this was something I would say was an impossibility. I began the first book with an equal measure of enthusiasm and trepidation, and I soon found the only way to silence the enormity of the task was with regular sessions at the keyboard, ignoring my myriad mistakes, until the first draft was complete. Then, to silence the inner critic, I rewrote the book a half dozen times more, fighting for improvement with each iteration. When the time came for my second book, I collected my hard-earned lessons, wrote an outline, and began again. While the goal was no less daunting, I knew it was achievable if I wrote every day. And this applies to the latest book. The reason I bring this up, last week, for a brief moment at Heroes Con, I dared to consider myself an author. And with a deft flick of my self-conscious mind, I snuffed out that flame. Because I believe you're a writer until you're published, and then you're an author. Now, before you judge me, let me show you how I contextualize it. You don't need a degree to do creative work, but in order for me to achieve things, I need goals, and I've always set mine high. Become a comic book penciler for the big two, design for worldwide brands, and publish as an author with the big four. I don't set them because I feel special or particularly talented, but because I realize that if I don't reach them, I still end up far higher than I was before I began. These goals drive me, and we have to do whatever it takes to drive us to make the work. So I write with the intention that my novels be on the bookstore shelves under a major publisher. And if so, amazing. And if not, it's still amazing because I'm writing the stories I want to, with or without the moniker. So this week is part 2 with my talk with Keith Browning. Keith was at Heroes last week as well, and we had a couple brief chats. We were both running around. He said he spent more time walking around than he was at his table, or at least a 50-50 split, which I think is great because that's a big chunk of being there, is building that network. And this week, our talk kind of carries over from what we started last week. Keith kind of gets into how he framed getting into comic books for himself, how to make it into the business. Talks about feedback with his own projects, which I think is super important. I can't recommend building a close group of peers who you can share your work with and get the professional encouragement you need to progress. We also talk about guitars, and having an outlet is super important to your brain chemistry. So settle in and enjoy part 2 with Keith Browning. It's the best way to price things. If you're not starving, it's a phenomenal way to price something because it's the only way you're going to drive up your sale line.
Yeah. Anyway.
So okay, so you get hit in the head with all red.
Yeah.
Like, are you like? I mean, are you an avid drawer at that age? Like when you're 12, are you drawing all the time, or are you just a kid who's a kid?
No, I was definitely grew up being like that kid
Yeah.
in class. I even from like kindergarten, I remember drawing a picture of a tiger or a mouse or something, and then the teachers got all excited and wanted to put it in the yearbook, and it got put in the school's yearbook. And this was like a K-5 to 12 school. It was a segregationist school in South Carolina.
Nice.
It was founded in 1970, I think. It's like that's a particular thing happened that year.
Okay.
At any rate, so yeah, like even at that time, that was my thing. I remember people getting freaked out. It's like, oh, he draws stick figures, but he puts clothes on them. So I grew up being like, yeah, I'm that kid that can draw, and that pretty much stayed the same until all through high school. There was one other girl in high school that like me and her were the ones who drew, and my stuff was always a little bit more, yeah, like pop arty, and her stuff was more like she's shading the upper lip, that kind of thing. So yeah, was always a little doodling dude.
Well, then, so what's the gap and the transition from you being the doodling dude to stepping into the realm of doing this comic book thing?
Well, 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's a chunk of time. I mean,
of figuring myself out. Yeah, there was a lot of time that was spent, and throughout all of it, like I was always like doodling, but never like trying to be serious about it or anything like that. And I was caught up with like various work things or like playing with bands and things like that. And at some point, probably around like when I was like 26 or so, I decided to like, oh, I'll take it, like actually try. And I was like between jobs, and so for a few months, like I heard, what's the British guy does the ink washes? You just talked to him.
Oh, Danny Earls.
Yeah. I remember, like I listened to that. I heard him talking about
He's Irish, just so we don't have any
he's
issues between
the British Isles.
Once again, Ireland, not Britain.
Oh, it doesn't count.
Unless you're only in the north of Ireland, it doesn't count.
Okay. Britain is a geographic term for the island of Britain. Is that what we're saying?
This is Keith. Just trying to get through this one. And me just holding him to the fire.
So this lad, he was talking about the how he spent that time like treating it like a 9-to-5 job, and he did it for like 3 years, and I really related to that, except for my journey with that lasted about 3 months.
Okay.
It was just like one summer where when I was like 26 or 27, and then I was just I had a schedule I made. I treated it like 9-to-5 job. I for like 3 months paid for a subscription to New Masters Academy. You know that?
Not at all.
It's like it's an online art. It's an online, like it's kind of directed towards fine art, but it's an online school, and you pay a monthly fee, and you get access to all these courses taught by well-known, well-liked artists and teachers in the industries. It has like figure drawing, perspective, like sculpting, all this kind of stuff. But I subscribed to it just long enough to like go through all the fundamental courses to like identify what the fundamentals are and what I need to work on and what I need to do. And like at the time, like I was good enough and my wife was supportive enough that I was like looking at concept art as a path. And I was like talking and getting the admissions sorted out with a school in Montreal. And I'd looked at some other schools, and then at some point in there, just like mental health just tanked.
Mm.
And that's an ongoing thing through all this, but I'm not like going to go all into that. But that was a thing where it was like, this was the closest I got, was like this summer when I was like 26. And yeah, it just completely tanked. Didn't believe in myself, like lost it. It was just, and it was just gone.
Yeah.
And then, but then I spent the next like 4 or 5 years still doodling and stuff, but I had all that stuff, all that fundamental stuff now that I know,
Mm-hmm.
because at this point I have no training. I've never had an art class, like even in school, that we didn't have those. I'm from a small, like rural town in the Bible Belt, like
Right.
quarter of shame. I went to a quarter of shame school. So like I didn't have any of that training. So I didn't know what I was needing to pay attention to, what I needed to actually improve. Um, so I I got that in that 3 months, and then I stopped, and then life continued on. But during that time, I continue to mess around and doodle, but I have this in my head now, so I'm able to get better just passively
Mm-hmm.
now that I have these new pathways to think through. And then like 2019 or so, I got an iPad, um, and decided I wanted to like draw again. And this was after, I think I went to like a used bookstore, and I was just flipping through newer stuff, because normally when I'd read comics all throughout all this time, it's just going to the library, whatever's at the library. So I don't have my
Mm-hmm.
thumb to the pulse of anything that's going on in the industry or who people are, what's going on with like mainstream books, because it's just whatever's at the library. And I go to this like a used bookstore that has a big comic section of new stuff, and I'm just going around and looking at stuff, and I'm flipping through, you know, there was particularly like a few dark horse books that I was looking at, and I was like, I can do better than this now. Like
Mm.
looking at these, and that
Yeah.
kind of injected my brain with a little bit of like, confidence. And that being said, that kind of shows a little naivete on my part for what those people's lives are like thinking
Sure.
like, oh, this is a person like does this, this is their living and they're doing all this stuff. But it did like give me enough confidence to say, I'm gonna start doing this again. And there was something different about this time. And now we are like 4 years later from that moment. And you can pretty much, like, if you go to my Instagram and you scroll around all the way to the bottom, it should be 2019, and you'll see like that was the moment that like I had seen a thing. I said, I'm gonna draw again. I bought an iPad and started drawing. Um and then, you know, just went from there. And I would definitely recommend that to people. That iPad is pretty cool if you're just trying to get better fast, because of how quickly you can iterate and play, and you
Mm-hmm.
can do it wherever. At this point, I really don't like inking on it,
Yeah.
but I don't mind drawing on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if that answered your question, or if there was a particular question.
No. I was, I'm just curious. I mean, I'm super curious about how, like, you have one of the hallmark elements that happens in most everyone's creative career of whatever it is when you're young, and someone older, someone of authority says, that's really good. Now,
Mm-hmm.
whether that teacher knew anything or not, it doesn't matter. That teacher was your teacher. They were older. So their word held more weight when you're, in whatever grade. So that's a huge thing, because it gives you this sort of like, oh, I, she didn't say that to somebody else. She just said it to me. And that makes it okay to kind of like think a second time to go like, well, maybe I could do something like that again. And the other one is the, you know, I could do better than that. When you look at someone who's in a published book, and we're not like, I'm not, and you're not knocking those people in any way, but I think you have to have this sense of delusion in your head to think you can do something, because without it, reality comes in and goes, well, the odds are so against you. And let's take a look at on the economics of this. Like, I mean, the practical brain, if it ruled the comic book world, it wouldn't be too good for comics.
Yeah, no.
No.
It's a horrible idea. No one wants to tell me that. I know it.
No, but everyone knows it. Everyone knows it.
No. I'm not saying like everybody, like industry people, obviously, but nobody, like, there's no family member that's like, why are you doing that?
Right.
Everybody's pretty nice about it.
Hey, he's not in jail, so let's be okay with this, okay?
I think most people are like unfamiliar enough with it to just think it's kind of cool. Because enough of like my relatives have kids, so they're like, oh yeah, my kid, they love this.
They love cartoons.
Yeah. So
I saw that Iron Man movie.
Yeah. He's got those hands, those jazz hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's not so much of that coming down from like external sources of like anybody like making me feel bad about the outlook for this kind of stuff. And I, and my closer family, super supportive, especially my wife, who you've met.
Yeah, she's great.
Lady. I know. But yeah, so it's more just getting to concentrate on like this thing that I've known for a long time, but didn't believe in myself. I wanted to do. And it's like that thing, like if you don't do it, well, it's not going to happen, is it? Yeah. And it was just a long time of just pretty much just me as a person, and my brain chemicals just weren't there. I wasn't there. I'm there now. Like I've been so just like even keel for years now, and like feel figured out, and like, oh, like I can do this. I can stick with this. It's there's no question.
Right.
It's like, yes, I'm in this now. It feels like I'm good. And it's a really good place for me to be.
Yeah.
In all this, I've always been jealous of, like, you hear about the kid that like he knows exactly what he wants to do from like the get-go.
Yeah.
And he has the focus to do that all through childhood, through college, and that's what he did. And that kind of focus, like, it's rare and weird. But I'm a little jealous of it, because just imagining, I think everybody does that, imagining like what would I be capable of if I had had that focus for those years.
Right.
Those aimless years of yeah.
But you said brain chemistry, and it's so true. I bought we'll talk guitars here for a sec. So I bought my first guitar in 1987. So I bought a 1983 Fender Stratocaster. Because it was black and it was a Strat. I'm like, that's the guitar I want. So I went to Chelsea Guitar, which was in the Hotel Chelsea, where all the cool stuff happened in New York City in the 70s and 80s.
I stayed there once.
It was a used guitar, and the guy was like, yeah, cool. And I bought it. And I tried for 30 years to play this thing. I couldn't. I would make flashcards. I tried everything under the sun, and I couldn't remember.
That's now.
Okay. No, that's 40. No, 30 years have been 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how old you are.
I'm really old.
Okay.
And it was this like I said, I tried and tried and tried and tried. And then I got, for a birthday, my wife bought me 4 guitar lessons. And
nice of her.
I didn't even have an acoustic guitar. So I show up with my electric guitar to this acoustic, guitar teacher's thing.
Did you even like bring an amp?
I don't even remember if I brought an amp or not. I can't remember.
Okay.
He may have had an amp. I can't remember. He may have loaned me his guitar. But the point was, we didn't do anything the first time. Like I banged out whatever I could, which was just terrible. And then he's like, put the guitar down. And he talked to me for like an hour. And then he sent me away, and I went back the next week or two. And then he like revealed the math that I needed to know in my brain of how the chord structures work and how that kind of the basic understanding of it. And I was able
Mhm.
to grab that bit of information and build on it. After that, like sort of autodidactically, I was able to kind of go, okay, this is this, this is this, this is this. Well, that makes sense. And then I'm okay. But I could never get that years before. And there were so many things. And like you said, this focus thing, like when I was a kid, I told my family, I'm going to draw comic books. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And they were like, you're an idiot. Like what, that's not the real thing. And I went off to art college, and I started working for Marvel as a penciler right out of school. But you say focus, I don't think it wasn't focus for me. It was just ambition and a lot of energy. The focus wasn't there. So I was kind of flailing about, but
What
at a
about
high.
competing interests?
Competing is a good word. I was really
Yeah,
competing to.
well, that was another thing, like in the focus thing, is at least for me, was competing interests,
Okay.
where like the music thing,
Mm-hmm.
like you you can't be you can't be putting yourself too much into too many things, or you're never going to get anywhere with any of it.
Yeah.
So that, I was wondering if you had stuff like that, like if you don't have any competing interests and you're just doing this one thing, that seems like it's you have a little bit of a straighter path through that focus.
I mean, art. I think art was my thing from a very young age. Doing
Mhm.
art, making things. So the ability to conceive of something and execute it in a visual fashion was pretty. That was where I lived as a kid, and I got more competing interests once I got out of college, and that was problematic for my comic book career.
There was for me, was one of those big moments that helped me kind of pull things together and focus more on art, was the realization that I shouldn't, like, I absolutely should not try to put music at the forefront, or try to make money for music, or make music the thing that I'm trying to do with my life, because it is like the way I experience music is fundamentally different from visual art, in that, and the way I like create it and involve myself in it is like there's too much of me in it,
Mhm.
and it feels too much like an expression of something a little bit too essential to myself, so that like immediately, as soon as like I made something, like I hate it, I don't want to show anybody, if I or there's too much emotion in it,
Mhm.
versus with visual art, I can be very content with the things that I make. And I don't have the same kind of emotion that goes into it. Like I could never do music as a day job, but I can do visual art as a day job, because I'm not putting the same thing into it.
Yeah.
And that was something I didn't realize until I was in my 20s. That like I've never cried over visual art.
Right.
Like I've never been so frustrated that I like when I'm looking at these giants and like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that.
Right.
And then but then I remember like having a huge emotional moment, like having this, like thinking about the songwriter. And it's not about like technique, or like being able to, not thinking you're going to be able to play a good enough like riff or something like that. It's the fundamentals of being able to put together these ideas and these words in a way that's evocative and speaks to some kind of lived experience that I just don't have. And I don't think I would ever. And I don't think this person will in a few years. I think that there's a certain type of expression that is limited for a person,
Mm-hmm.
and they can come and go. I know Bob Dylan talks about that, where it's like he doesn't understand how those early songs happened, and he knows he couldn't do it now.
Right.
And yeah, the aspiring for that is crazy to start with, but there was something about it that was just too emotional for me.
I get that. No, I get that. I mean, I think I think comics for me was a bit like that for a while. I think that was my end all be all. And I couldn't separate the reality of what was happening in my career of comics with what I was doing. And I think that was really ultimately what led me to kind of walk away from it.
Mm.
I didn't listen as much as I just did. So there was very little thinking happening. I wasn't capable of being too objective with the reality around me as I was going through the 90s.
Yeah, I find myself now, like, I happily make my art during the day, and I still play with bands,
Yeah.
but I only play bass because it's the most fun. I get to bebop around. I get to basically do whatever I want because, like, I'm good enough that, like, I can just kind of step into situations and just have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And people generally think of it more like a support thing.
Right.
Um, Even though I get to have fun and I can, I end up playing like I'm playing with like a deathcore band, and they're playing like incredibly simplistic, like boring music, but where they're just like playing like these detuned guitars in the first three frets,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like this there's nothing happening here, but I can sit there and I can change the chord centers and move it around on bass,
Mm-hmm.
and and just have fun with that and do what I want. And that is a fundamentally different thing from my previous experience with music, where it was more expressive and less me having fun.
Mm.
So I'm in a good spot with that now too.
I think it's that was that phrase, if you find the thing you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I'm like, I've never really completely believed in that phrase,
Hmm.
because work is work. And if it's work that's something that you are generating from whole cloth, there's a lot of you in that when it comes to the time of judgment, whether it exists in the world or if it doesn't exist in the world.
Mm.
Well, we have these digital tools. Ultimately, we don't control the pipeline. So, how do you prosecute drawing for pure love and joy on the iPad into getting hired to make the artwork for someone else's comic book?
Hmm. Well, okay, so yeah, I was just drawing stuff and just
Mm-hmm.
putting it on Instagram. And with the yeah, I'd like to draw comics, but right now I'm just trying to get, feel it out and get better at drawing. And I was just doing that for a while. And I feel like it was probably like after the first time I did a Battober,
Okay.
um, someone reached out and asked if I was interested in drawing a comic. It was like small indie guy, and I said okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like $30 a page. My first thing was an entire issue. Um, and you know what? Like, I don't feel too bad about it. Like, looking back at it, I'm like, you know what? That for my first thing,
Mm-hmm.
and me like taking on an entire issue, don't feel too bad about it. And then yeah, it's pretty much everything has come through like the first few things were just people seeing my stuff on Instagram and then reaching out. So I do like a short story, and then I got picked up to do a few issues of the Fantomah for Lev Gleason,
Mm-hmm.
which should be out in October finally. I don't know. I drew those the first one almost 2 years ago. It's been a little bit of a tail on that release schedule. Um and then it was meeting people at cons.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, going to cons where I like met you, like meeting Van. So met Van Jensen for anyway. And then he reached out to get me to do the Stardust story. And then I do the Stardust story with Ron Mars writing. And then, so that's like, it's just like a little snowball. And then, Ron seemed to like it. So then he got me on this other job with him. And that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And it's just weird. Like, I don't know. I'm not complaining. I definitely didn't expect to have the opportunities that have been presented to me
Right.
as quickly as they have. I had no, I mean, I don't know what my expectations were exactly, but it wasn't this.
Well, I mean, how we kind of started off talking about thinking, I think to me, it's evident on the page that you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And Ron can tell the difference of the thin person who can think and who can't think when they're drawing. And I think that is a significant factor when people are making these choices.
Yeah.
You could also feel like it's all very much like, I don't feel like I did the right, like, is this the way it should have happened? Is this happening too fast? Is this, like all these kind of questions kind of come into mind. Like I didn't think about it and it all came too fast for me and I didn't handle it well. So, but I was also, 10 years younger than you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think generally people, especially in my position, it's easy to have that self-doubt and like, I don't know why, like, I'm not that good. But then, like, I was sitting at my table at MomoCon and I was going to give a couple of my Battober books from the past year. I have a few of them printed out. And I was going to give one to Rico and one to Robert Wilson the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'd been chatting with him. But before I did it, I had that like, do I want them to have this? I picked it up and I methodically, like, I flipped through the entire book looking at every one of those images again. And I felt good about it. Like
Okay.
I felt good. I felt proud of like October 2023 Keith. Like, yeah, good job. This one was wonky, but the rest of them are fine. There's only one in there that I'm like, that one's a little wonky, but the rest of them, I was very happy with. This is one. Each of these, I made this in a day. It's fine, and then I gave them out. So, like, there are those moments of like still that little weird self doubt,
Mm-hmm.
but then I look at what I did and I feel good about it, and I see the progression, and I look forward to, like, I don't know what it's gonna look like in 2 years. Where am I gonna be at? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it, and I'm having fun with it.
I think that's that's a great part. I mean, like it's an incredibly long day, drawing. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
never, as rarely is it short. And I think that if you are having fun with it, like that's the engine, that whole, this is a lot of fun thing. I'm reminiscing at all the fun of listening to music and drawing comic books. Like it's a very fun kind of thing to do.
There are things that I know that there are things I had to do to make it more fun. Like, there was a big chunk of time where everything I did was digital.
Okay.
And there was something about that, like being strapped to the table, to the computer, that started feeling just, it felt grindy.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like having to stare at a screen the whole time and all that stuff. And I know that I have more fun when I'm able to actually deal with my hands and ink and all that. So I made a concerted effort to transition to inking. So I still pencil digitally, but I do all my inking
Mm-hmm.
on my table. And that was huge as far as making it joyful and fun, because I get more of that sense. It's not just in the zen and the fun of being able to like physically feel something and doing something with my hands, which is a huge part of why that's good, but also having a thing at the end of it.
Yeah.
Where when I did things digitally, I didn't really feel like I did a thing at the end. It's there, I did it, but it doesn't feel like I did.
Dude, I sit in front of the computer all day, whether it's, doing design work but like my wife is an artist and, she's a sculptor and a painter. So her whole day is spent with her hands. moving things and shaping things and whatever the thing is. So she looks at me and she's like, what have you done? Like, and she's not being accuser, but she can't conceive of this life in the
Yeah.
box. And I get it. I totally get it. I honestly feel far more liberated writing than I do doing design work in the computer, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't feel as sort of constrained when I'm sitting and typing on a white screen.
What's the alternative?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
IBM Selectric that's sitting in a storage unit. That's the alternative.
Yeah, like that's the alternative is a little bit silly.
It is cumbersome and something I would be horrible at doing. So
Nobody's there's nobody being, what's the elitist about you typing on a computer.
there are people. There are people out there. Trust me.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
There's people who are elitist about that? Like,
There are
no,
people
you gotta,
who, yes, there are. There are some. Not many.
like people wanting you to do longhand or on a typewriter?
On a
Or
typewriter
both.
that I know.
That's
I mean, I
super
know.
weird.
Yeah,
Or I guess maybe their idea that like you're getting the thoughts out and you like it's cumbersome to go back, so you just kind of keep going,
sure.
or that you really thought about it before you put it down. I don't know.
That's
Or
probably a
if
little
it's,
bit of it. Yeah.
I didn't know if it was that or just the physicality of it. Like,
I mean, the thing is like nothing I create I feel too special about. I mean, I'm proud of the things that I do, but I don't feel very special
mm-hmm.
about them. So the fact that it's a ones and zeros, or if it's on paper, it doesn't matter to me. It's just a thing.
I think that not feeling special is is a good is a good place to be. That's the whenever anybody like comes up to my table and is like, I want to be an artist. Do you have any advice? That's one of the like main things I tell them is don't be precious about your art.
Yeah.
Like if you can't draw it a second time, you can't draw it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't be worried about like if you can't throw this away, then you can't draw it. Like if you feel too attached to it. So I definitely feel that, and I try to be that way now.
You're remarkably good at not, or at least not letting me know that you're precious about stuff. I mean, you and I have been talking about the story you've been writing, and you've shown me a lot of stuff, and you'll show me almost what looks like an entirely new thing from what you showed me previously. And that's a lot of work. It's a ton of work.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have just written it and changed a couple lines in a script and there you go. But like what you're doing is showing that lack of preciousness. You're just making a thing and you're trying to make that thing better.
Yeah. Well, because you got to remember, like, hardly anything is amazing.
It's a great way to put it.
So if you don't put the expectation in yourself to like, oh man, this has to be amazing,
mm-hmm.
It's a thing for someone to enjoy or not, but it doesn't have to be amazing, and it probably won't be. Let's just say it's not going to be. And if it is, it's probably in spite of yourself that it was. I don't know how.
You don't get to choose. The audience chooses whether it's amazing or not.
Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely subscribe to, like, I'm happy to share things out and take advice and think about things from other people's perspective instead of just trying to create something purely from my own, and think that I don't think for me that there's that much value in just being the box that everything came out of. And I'm the filter that everything went through, because ultimately I'm still the filter everything goes through. But it's just like, it's like I remember being in jobs where people would get upset that like a lady was getting hired into a position over because she was a lady, and having to explain to people like, no, you want that to happen. You want there to be other perspectives in these positions. This is good for this workplace. It's good to have these other perspectives and these other viewpoints, and you should be taking advantage of that. And I definitely think about that with my own stuff, especially when I'm trying to write.
Yeah. I don't know. Like the longer and longer I've I'm in whatever creative fields that I'm working in, the sooner you can get that feedback when the least amount of work that has been done, the better the results will be.
Yeah. I'm just bad about it so far.
What do you mean? What about seeking the feedback?
Oh, no. I don't get feedback early on. I tend to, well, not early on. I just do a bunch of work to present a thing
Yeah, right.
because I don't trust, we've talked about this, but I don't trust my ideas in written word. I need to present them as a physical or as a visual thing.
So you need a whole bunch of emojis to
Yeah.
to tell your story.
I wonder how that would work. I should try that for the next one. Just include a bunch of emojis. I feel like I could probably I'll try this on the next one. Like write out the script, but draw little doodles all through it, just a kind of little mood pieces and things like that to kind of get things across. Instead, I definitely don't think I'm going to do the route of like making entire rough draft books.
Right. It's a
Because
lot of
that's
work.
well, yeah, you can't keep doing that. That was just
No.
I had the luxury of time for that, so I was taking advantage of it.
Well, like, just trying to touch on the music aspect. It's like the songwriting thing. Like, hey, what came first, the melody or the lyrics? And there's never an answer for that. It's both, because
Depends.
yeah, totally. And I think when you
If
are
it's ABBA, it's definitely the melody.
oh yeah, for sure. But it's like if you're the person who is writing and drawing it, I don't think it has. It is that both thing. It's the depends thing. You're just kind of forming this thing together. You don't have to be so rigorous in how you approach it.
Yeah, and with that the last time I did that, a lot of it also came from wanting, because I'd done books where I went script first, and then to the point of like describing all the panels out and all that stuff like a normal comic script, and then having to figure out how to make that work. And on this one, I wanted to particularly just describe what the page is, but not the panels, and then work out what I want the thing to look like, to go visuals,
Right.
like rough idea and then visuals first, because trying to do better about taking advantage of comics as a medium, and focusing on those visuals first instead of trying to get the scripting laid out first. So that's kind of where that came from.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it visually it turned out all right, but we're being very vague in the way we talk through this thing that we only know about. Anyway, moving on.
So Heroes is in a few weeks. You're going to be starting that new project, I guess.
Yeah, it was frustrating. So I'll just really quick backstory. We've been talking about a book that I was working on. Alex has looked at it a few times, other people have, and just other factors and things like that. I felt like, okay, I need to rework this a little bit because of issues with simple things that all writers seem to deal with, of trying to figure out what the essence of things are, what the log line should be, what are the basic motivations, and how do you express those to people. Where I was feeling like I need more time with this. And then in the conversation, I just gave him a quick rundown. It took about 15 seconds for me to describe this other story I was working on, and it came out effortlessly. It was frustrating because of how easy it was to describe this other story. And then the next day, I haven't told you this yet, Alex. I went next day, pulled out my Word document, sat down, and it just flowed out like a 5-issue like layout. It was stupid. Just the beats make sense. They're funny. It was like the things add up in a satisfying way. The motivations make sense. So I'm definitely intending to just put more energy into that for the first, for my first me thing. And I'll share more about it with you later.
Yeah. Well, I think if you can have a better picture in your head of the thing, I think the odds of success are much higher.
Yeah. I currently agree.
Yeah. We'll see how the gambit plays out, right?
Just time.
Yeah.
All I need's time.
It's all we need. It's the only thing that we don't have enough of, but it's our job. It's our job to squeeze every minute we can from things. So, Heroes, are you doing any other shows this year?
Just Heroes and Dragon Con.
Okay.
I put out feelers for Chattanooga in October.
Right.
And that's all I got planned.
Well, I've heard that there's a really good bakery in Chattanooga. So,
is that a joke?
No, I'm totally serious.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I don't know if it was like a song lyric or something.
No, Rich Starkings lives there, and he has this bakery he goes to, and it looks phenomenal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been.
I'm easily motivated.
I don't think I've ever been to Tennessee.
Well, okay, there you go. Here's a good chance.
So you're easily motivated. Oh, that was a thing that I thought was worth sharing is I find I'm not very intrinsically motivated.
Okay.
But when I have something to do for somebody, I can get hyper focused on it. Like when I'm in a position of being able to like work with somebody or deliver for somebody or somebody expects something,
right,
then I'm suddenly like, okay, let's do this. But when it's just me, I don't feel the same. It's not like I'm unmotivated. I can't do anything. It's just different. And I think it's better when I have that carrot of somebody expecting something or somebody asking me to do something versus it just being me asking me to do something.
Oh, I get that. I mean, it just fits in that external structure aspect of life. If you have an external structure, it's a lot easier. Like if you had a personal trainer who's you paid for and is waiting for you at the gym, you're probably going to go.
I was just thinking this links back to that focus thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you don't have that built-in focus.
Right.
Yeah. It's nice to have those external little pokers poking you in the right direction or just expecting you to do whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I'm a huge fan of that stuff. And I think if we can try to be as, reflective or objective and conscious of our actions and and what drives us and how do we take advantage of these things to make ourselves more fulfilled in the things that we want to do.
Yeah, generally, I feel good about stuff nowadays. Yeah, you're saying like the idea of like trying to achieve that feeling fulfilled, feeling full.
Yeah.
Where, being involved in this has been a good move on my part, I think. Ignoring like monetary things, or whatever, public perception or clout, but the actual, just the interiority of myself in this space.
Yeah.
Has it's been a good time.
I think that one of the nice things is finding and developing that peer group as you make your way through the business. The people who are your support network in the thing that you do is so crucial to your long-term, success and joy in said business.
Yeah, I just wish I could see people more.
I guess that's what this thing is for, right? Like we can stare at each other on these video calls. Now, okay, so next time you and I talk, we'll talk on a video call. How's that? Rather than...
I'm happy to just talk on the phone because then I can walk around and do yard work while we talk.
You can burn stuff? Okay.
It's like sitting here listening to my dog lick herself.
Well,
but like the talking thing is like me and like Anderson Carmen and Christian Herrera. Like we have a schedule. We get together and stream, and it's a thing Anderson puts up on his YouTube. It's live, but none of us do it because we expect people to watch it. We're
Right.
doing it just to like have an expectation that we're gonna do it and we get to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much the only hanging out I get to do with anybody on a normal basis is
Right.
once a month, at least peers, not my like normal, friends I grew up with, which, as you get older, you get fewer and fewer of those.
Yeah.
But, and that's all I get because there's not that many people around where I live. So it's not like I'm going to be able to like go out and, do all that stuff. I've tried making a little bit of an inroad with a group around here. We got some stuff cooking.
Okay. I look
Yeah.
forward to I look forward to hearing how your machinations plan out.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few, we got a few people. We just need to get that first, I think you just need to get that first meeting in and then we'll go from there.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
So Fantomah?
Yeah.
Fantomah.
Fantomah. Mystery Woman of the Jungle.
Sometime later this year?
Yeah. I sent a message to the editor. Oh, it might have actually. Nope. I sent a message to the editor earlier today to see, if we had any updates on that. But it's supposed to come out in October because it's sort of a horror, like superhero horror book. So, and it's going through Diamond, so they push stuff in that vein in October. So that's what that's supposed to be. And I guess we're just doing promotion stuff. The
Nice.
Then the Stardust book,
yeah,
that Van Jensen put together, and Mike Allred did the cover. Like me talking, you see how huge that is for me?
Yeah,
that's huge.
It's huge.
That's a huge.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I've barely done anything, and now, like, there's this book. Mike Allred did the cover. He did interior work. I feel like there's like a 99% chance he'll flip through it, and he's gonna see my stuff. And not my stuff in the sense of like I went up to him at a con with a little ash can like book or like, hey, will you look at my stuff? But he'll just see it in a natural way.
Right.
And that's pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was saying is like I didn't expect like that, 5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Right.
So yeah, no complaints.
That's awesome.
When it comes to any of that. So like I said, we'll see where this goes.
Nice. So then you got personal project, then you got the Ron Mars project you're working with?
Yeah, that's a comic for a American small batch brewery.
Okay.
It's a vodka company.
Okay.
I don't know how secretive they are about it right now, so I'm just be more vague.
It's a thing.
But it's neat because it's a whole issue, but it's not product placement. They just want to make a cool object.
Cool.
Just because they're like super into the arts of their local community and they just want to, just make stuff.
That's cool.
And present themselves as a group who value art and creating interesting, things and not just this product for you to consume, literally consuming. So there's that. I don't have anything else to promote in terms of that. It's pretty much just Fantomah later this year, and I don't know when the Stardust book is coming out.
Sure,
it should be later this year as well.
I hope so. I can't wait to get my copy.
Yeah, but it also it got funded through Zoop, so it's not like you can go buy a copy now or anything.
No, there will be Overrun for sale. So if anybody is listening to this and goes, wait a minute, Mike Allred, Keith Browning, Van Jensen,
Xander Cannon, Francesco Francavilla, Jesse Lonergan.
That's right, Jesse's in there.
Yeah, Jay Baruchel, he's in there too.
It's a pretty great lineup, but there will be copies available after fulfillment. So if you do have interest, follow Zoop, and you'll see an announcement for whatever overflow sales.
I don't know if you noticed, but the two projects that I have coming out this year are both the same guy that created both those characters. They're both like public domain characters
Oh,
created by
okay.
Fletcher. I can't
Right.
remember his last
Fletcher,
name.
yeah.
Yeah. So he made Stardust and he made Fantomah, Mystery Woman of the Jungle.
Look at you.
And that, yeah.
Collect them all.
2024 is going to be my Fletcher, what's his name year.
You can have a hard-working relationship if you can't remember his last name.
I don't think he can remember.
I don't think so either.
The joke is that he's dead.
Oh, yes, that's right. He's dead.
Yeah. It's been probably 50 years. I don't know.
Oh, quite some time. Yeah. All right, my friend. Are you going to get back to work now, or is the day done?
No. I'm going to get back to it.
Well, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem.